Okay, so let's dive right in. What we're going to do today is unpack a really sophisticated and frankly fascinating communication strategy. The source material we're looking at lays out step by step how you can actually challenge someone's entire worldview and, replace it with a new one. So let's get into the mechanics of how this whole narrative gets built.
Right, so every great narrative, it needs a hook. And this is it. This is the line that kicks the whole thing off. Its only job is to crack the door open in someone's mind. It immediately challenges their core assumptions about the world, getting them ready to question everything they thought was solid fact. Settled science, history, all of it.
So, the first move in this strategy, it's all about creating what's called cognitive dissonance. And it's clever. It doesn't just throw crazy theories at you from nowhere. No, it uses documented, verifiable anomalies, things that just don't quite fit into our normal picture of reality. So let's look at the 4 big ones this whole thing is built on.
Okay, so these are the 4 big cracks in that wall of consensus reality that the strategy really hammers on. You've got psychic phenomena, physics-defying craft, this idea of infinite energy just sitting in a vacuum, and impossibly advanced ancient stonework. And the whole point here is to frame these not as just weird little oddities, but as genuine clues that something bigger is going on.
So what's with this number? Well, that's the price tag. $20 million for a US government program that ran for 24 years. And who ran it? The CIA. And what were they looking into? Well, that very first anomaly we talked about, non-local consciousness. The program had a pretty famous name, Project Stargate.
Now, what's really key here is how the narrative uses this stuff. See, the source material claims these points are pulled directly from declassified government files. The narrative really leans in hard on the idea that Stargate wasn't a bust. It produced statistically significant results. We're talking about participants successfully locating missing people, even uncovering secret Soviet military sites. And the data was apparently so good that it convinced, and this is a direct quote, hardened skeptics something profound was happening. So you can see what they're doing here, right? By using official-sounding sources, the narrative tries to build its first pillar on what feels like a solid foundation of fact.
All right, so if all this stuff is supposedly documented, the big obvious question is, why isn't it on the nightly news, right? And that leads us perfectly into the second part of this strategy, which is all about explaining the secrecy. And it frames it not as some evil plot, but as a calculated move for institutional self-preservation.
And answering this question is absolutely central to making the whole narrative believable. And the answer this strategy gives is a real mind-bender. These things aren't being hidden because they're fake. They're being hidden because they are real. And the consequences of them being real are just, well, they're too big, too disruptive for our world to handle as it is.
So the source material lays out this thing called a strategic threat assessment matrix. And according to that matrix, officially confirming that consciousness is non-local isn't seen as some amazing scientific breakthrough. No way. It's rated a 5 out of 5 existential threat. And why? Well, the argument is it would completely shatter the materialist paradigm and basically make all military secrecy impossible overnight.
And it's the exact same logic for zero-point energy. That also gets a 5 out of 5 threat score. Here, the narrative claims the risk is nothing short of total economic collapse. Because think about it. It would completely upend our scarcity-based economy and basically wipe out the entire global energy industry.
And this table here, it really lays out the stakes as this narrative presents them. So from this point of view, just coming out and telling everyone the truth is basically an unacceptable risk. It would rewrite history, it would crash global systems. So the whole conspiracy isn't framed as evil, but more like a desperate, calculated act to keep the system from falling apart.
And then there's the human angle, which is always fascinating. It's not just about these huge systemic risks. The source material points to a very real psychological barrier inside the intelligence community itself. It's this deep-seated fear of humiliation. I mean, nobody wants to be the guy who goes down in history as a charlatan for believing in this stuff. It's a powerful motivator.
Okay, so this is where things get really interesting. We're at a major turning point in the strategy. After building this whole case for incredible, suppressed truths, the narrative does a complete 180. It pivots, and it shifts the entire focus away from a story about external government secrets to a story about internal power.
So, the narrative has walked you down this rabbit hole of government cover-ups and hidden realities. It's got you hooked, but right when you think you know where it's going, it pulls the rug out from under you, it reframes the whole thing. The real secret, the ultimate conspiracy, it isn't about what they're hiding from you. And there it is. That's the pivot.
The ultimate conspiracy, the biggest secret of all, according to this narrative, is the fact that your own true, boundless creative power has been hidden from you. The story just shifted from what the government knows to what you are capable of doing. And just like that, you're not just a passive consumer of a conspiracy theory anymore, you're now an active participant in your own story of empowerment.
So how on earth does the strategy pull off this massive leap? It doesn't just say you're powerful and leave it at that. Oh no, it claims to give you the actual mechanism. And it does this by taking those anomalies it established earlier, non-local consciousness and zero-point energy, and fusing them together into this grand unified theory of how reality itself is created. And this right here is the core concept, the final piece of the puzzle that was supposedly suppressed. It's called word-based morphogenesis. And the idea is actually pretty simple when you break it down. Your consciousness, your focused intent provides the direction, and your language, your words, provide the code. The claim is that when you put those two together, they literally interact with the sea of energy in empty space to shape reality.
Okay, so let's walk through the supposed physics of how this works. Step 1. You combine your intent, your consciousness, with language, with the word. This action, the narrative claims, actually generates a measurable physical force in the quantum vacuum, something known as the Casimir effect. That force then puts structural pressure on what physicists call the quantum foam, and that pressure literally forces something that was just a potential into a manifest physical form. So the crucial link, the secret sauce, is this fusion of consciousness and quantum physics.
And this slide, this really sums it all up. This is the goal of the entire narrative strategy. It's designed to take you from the old paradigm, that reality is just built from passive stuff like matter and energy, to a brand new one. A paradigm where reality is actively built from information and intent. Your information, your intent.
And to tie it all together with a bow, the narrative loops all the way back to one of those first anomalies we talked about, ancient advanced technology. So how did they build those impossible ancient structures? The answer the narrative provides is word-based morphogenesis. The claim isn't that they used copper chisels to build the Great Pyramid. The claim is that they used this fundamental principle of reality creation. And that's how it ends. The strategy doesn't leave its audience with a neat conclusion. It leaves them with a personal challenge. After completely deconstructing their old reality and handing them this new one based on their own inherent power, it poses this final, very provocative question. The focus is no longer on them. It's entirely on you. The story becomes personal, it becomes actionable, and that's what makes it so powerful. So the source claims your words are the code of reality. The only question left is, what will you write?